The Telvari warship hung in Earth's orbit like a massive metal predator. General Doc stood at the command center, his four eyes scanning the blue planet below. His skin, tough and gray, tightened around his mouth as he frowned. "Such a primitive world," he said. "Their most advanced weapons can barely leave their atmosphere." Lieutenant Mock bowed slightly. "We have identified their military bases, General. The invasion can begin whenever you command." Doc nodded. "Start with their Pacific region. A small force should be enough. I want to observe their surrender protocols." Alarms blared across the Korean military base as strange lights appeared in the morning sky. Soldiers ran to their positions while civilians were moved to shelters. Commander Kim grabbed his rifle and helmet, shouting orders to his squad. "Form defensive positions. Remember your training." The first Telvari ships landed outside the base perimeter. Their doors opened with a hiss of steam, and tall alien soldiers marched out in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed in the sunlight, and their weapons hummed with energy. "They don't look so tough," said Private Choi, the youngest member of Kim's squad. "Don't underestimate them," Kim replied. "Wait for my signal." The Telvari commander raised a device that projected his voice. "Humans, your planet is now under Telvari control. Surrender your weapons and submit to processing." Kim gave the signal. His soldiers opened fire from hidden positions around the landing zone. The first wave of bullets surprised the aliens, who hadn't expected resistance. Several fell before they activated their energy shields. "They're fighting back," reported the Telvari field commander to General Doc. "They rejected our surrender demand." On his ship, Doc waved dismissively. "Crush them quickly. Show them the futility of resistance." The battle intensified. The Telvari weapons fired energy bolts that cut through concrete and metal. But the human soldiers had prepared well. They used the terrain for cover, moving constantly, never staying in one place long enough to become targets. Commander Kim watched as Private Choi took a glancing hit from an energy bolt. The young soldier's arm was badly burned, but instead of retreating, he switched his rifle to his other hand and continued firing. "Medic," Kim called, but Choi shook his head. "I can still fight, Commander." Across the battlefield, humans displayed similar determination. When their ammunition ran low, they improvised weapons. When their positions were compromised, they quickly adapted new tactics. In his command ship, General Doc watched the battle footage with growing concern. "Why haven't they surrendered?" he demanded. "Our forces outnumber theirs 10-1. The Telvari had expected an easy victory. Instead, they faced determined resistance that seemed to grow stronger with each setback. When the aliens destroyed one bunker, the humans would appear from hidden tunnels behind them. When the Telvari deployed their hover tanks, humans would use simple rope traps to disable them. "They fight like cornered animals," Lieutenant Mock observed. "No sense of self-preservation." 4 hours into what should have been a 30-minute operation, the Telvari field commander requested reinforcements. His force had suffered unexpected casualties. "Impossible." Doc slammed his fist on the command console. "They are barely into their space age. How are they still fighting?" The battle continued through the night. The humans used the darkness to their advantage, striking at Telvari positions and disappearing before counterattacks could be launched. They seemed to need minimal rest, functioning effectively despite injuries and exhaustion. When morning came, Doc received the shocking report. The initial invasion force had been forced to retreat. Over half the Telvari soldiers were dead or wounded, while the humans continued to fight. "I've studied thousands of species," Doc said, watching a video feed of a human soldier carrying a wounded comrade while still returning fire. "None continue fighting with such injuries. None adapt their tactics so quickly." The general zoomed in on Commander Kim, who was now leading a counterattack despite a serious wound to his leg. The human officer had fashioned a tourniquet and kept fighting. "These human soldiers have *king beasts," Doc finally exclaimed, his voice a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. What kind of evolution creates such tenacity? Lieutenant Mock looked troubled. Should we inform High Command that this will not be a standard conquest? Doc nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the battle footage. Yes. And request additional forces. Many additional forces. This primitive species is like nothing we have encountered before. On Earth, Commander Kim smiled grimly as he watched the alien ships retreating to orbit. He knew they would return with greater numbers. But now they understood what they were facing. Humans would not surrender their home without a fight. 3 weeks after the first alien attack, the world had changed. Nations that once fought each other now worked together against a common enemy. The Global Defense Alliance had formed, with military leaders from every country sharing information and resources. Captain Park stood in an underground facility, examining the alien weapon they had captured. Scientists and engineers crowded around him, taking measurements and running tests. "The energy source is unlike anything we've seen," said Dr. Han, tapping on her tablet. "But we're learning quickly." Park nodded. He had been chosen to lead Strike Team Alpha, a special unit created to fight the Telvari invaders. His team included the best soldiers from around the world. "Can we make it work with human hands?" Park asked, lifting the heavy rifle. "We already have," Dr. Han replied with a smile. She pressed a button, and a section of the wall moved aside to reveal a modified version of the alien weapon. "This one is balanced for human use, and it works underwater." Park raised an eyebrow. "Underwater? The Telvari can't swim. Their technology isn't designed for water. We've made these modifications based on that weakness." Elsewhere in the facility, other teams worked day and night. Some reverse engineered alien communications. Others developed new tactics based on known Telvari weaknesses. Humanity was adapting at an incredible speed. In orbit, General Doc received troubling reports. The Telvari had expected humans to cower in fear after the first attack. Instead, they were organizing and fighting back with surprising effectiveness. "They have already learned to jam our short-range communications," Lieutenant Mock reported, "and they're producing countermeasures to our scanning technology." Doc frowned. "How?" "It's been less than a month. They work continuously. Our surveillance shows their scientists and soldiers operating on minimal sleep cycles. They use chemical stimulants to maintain focus and alertness." On Earth, Captain Park led his team through intense training. They practiced with the new weapons and studied Telvari tactics. Everyone worked to the point of exhaustion, then pushed further. "The aliens have better technology," Park told his team during a rare break. "But they've never faced a species like ours. They don't understand what humans can endure when fighting for survival." His team included Surgeon Joe, an expert in demolitions, Corporal Ba, a former Olympic swimmer now using her skills for underwater infiltration, and Private Kang, a technology specialist who had already hacked into Telvari communication systems. Their first mission came sooner than expected. Intelligence discovered a Telvari forward base in a remote mountain region. Strike Team Alpha would test their new weapons and tactics against the invaders. "Remember," Park said as they prepared to deploy, "they expect us to fight like them, with standard military protocols. That's their weakness. We will do the unexpected." The team parachuted into the mountains at night during a thunderstorm that interfered with Telvari sensors. They approached the alien base from different directions, using the weather as cover. Inside his command ship, General Doc monitored the situation with growing concern. "We've lost contact with Outpost 7, he said. "Send reinforcements immediately." But the reinforcements arrived too late. Strike Team Alpha had already infiltrated the base, using tactics that confused the Telvari defenders. Corporal Bot approached through an underwater tunnel that the aliens hadn't bothered to secure. Sergeant Joe placed explosive charges at key structural points, while Private Kang disabled their communications. Captain Park led the direct assault, using the modified alien weapons with devastating effect. The Telvari soldiers, accustomed to fighting in organized formations, couldn't adapt to the humans' guerrilla tactics. "They're attacking from all sides." The Telveri commander reported in panic. "They're using our own weapons against us." Within an hour, the base was captured. The humans secured valuable technology and data before destroying the facility. General Doc watched the footage in disbelief. "How did they breach our defenses so easily?" he demanded. Lieutenant Mock replayed the surveillance recording. "They used the storm as cover. And this one," he pointed to Corporal Ba, "stayed underwater for over 4 minutes without breathing equipment." "Impossible," Doc muttered. "They're also functioning effectively despite minimal rest," Mock continued. "This soldier," he indicated Captain Park, "has been awake for over 50 hours according to our monitoring." Doc studied the humans with new respect and fear. They're not just fierce fighters. They're dangerously intelligent and adaptable. On Earth, Captain Park and his team returned to headquarters as heroes. Their mission had proven that humans could fight back effectively against the alien invaders. "This is just the beginning," Park told his team as they celebrated their victory. "Now we know their weaknesses, and they're starting to fear ours." The Global Defense Alliance quickly put the captured technology to use, manufacturing new weapons and defenses. Humanity was preparing not just to survive, but to take the fight to the enemy. General Doc sent an urgent message to Telveri High Command. "Request immediate reinforcements. The humans are not responding as expected. They adapt too quickly and fight beyond normal biological limits. This will not be a standard conquest." The Telveri High Command responded to General Doc's warnings by sending their elite forces to Earth. Massive warships appeared in orbit, armed with weapons designed to destroy much more advanced civilizations than humanity. "This time, we will crush their resistance completely," announced Supreme Commander Vol in a transmission to all Telveri forces. "No more underestimating these primitives." On Earth, the situation grew desperate. Despite their courage and adaptability, humans faced overwhelming technological superiority. Cities burned. Millions fled to underground shelters. The Global Defense Alliance calculated that humanity might have only weeks before defeat. Captain Park had been promoted to Major Lee after his team's successful missions. He now led an expanded Strike Team Alpha, tasked with the most dangerous operations against the invaders. "Our conventional forces can't match their firepower," General Yu told Major Lee during a secret briefing in the Alliance's underground headquarters. "But we've discovered something important about Telveri physiology. Their bodies cannot adapt quickly to environmental changes." Lee studied the data on the screen. "So they're vulnerable to rapid pressure and temperature shifts." "Exactly. Their bodies evolved on a planet with stable conditions. Even small environmental changes cause them severe discomfort. Major shifts can disable or kill them." This information led to a daring plan. The Alliance would attack the Telveri command carrier during the Battle of the Stratosphere, a massive air and space engagement that both sides had been preparing for. "This is a suicide mission," Lee told his team as they prepared. "But if we succeed, we might save humanity." The team included veterans from earlier missions and new specialists. They wore experimental suits designed to protect humans briefly in near-vacuum conditions, something the Telveri believed impossible for primitive beings. The battle began at dawn. Thousands of aircraft and modified alien craft rose to meet the Telveri fleet, while the main forces engaged in a conventional battle. Strike Team Alpha approached the command carrier in a small, stealthed ship. Inside his command center, General Doc monitored the battle. He had warned his superiors about human ingenuity, but they had dismissed his concerns. "Strange reading approaching Sector 7, reported a Telveri officer. "Identify it," Doc ordered, suddenly alert. Before they could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The humans had found a maintenance airlock and forced their way in. Rather than avoid the ship's defenses, they moved directly through areas exposed to vacuum and radiation, conditions no Telveri could survive even in protective gear. "They're deliberately exposing themselves to vacuum for short periods to bypass our shields," Doc reported incredulously to Supreme Commander Vol. Their bodies can withstand radiation levels that would kill our soldiers instantly. Lee and his team moved through the massive ship, fighting when necessary, hiding when possible. They had trained for this mission by exposing themselves to increasingly harsh conditions: extreme heat, cold, pressure changes, even brief vacuum exposure. Human bodies, evolved to survive on a planet with wildly varying environments, could endure what the Telvari could not. When they reached the ship's main weapons control center, they faced heavy resistance. Several team members fell to enemy fire. Lee himself took a serious wound to his shoulder but continued leading the attack. "Plant the charges," he ordered, firing his weapon one-handed while blood soaked his suit. "We finish this mission no matter what." General Doc watched in disbelief as the humans continued fighting despite injuries that would incapacitate any Telvari soldier. "How do they keep functioning?" he demanded. "Their blood loss should render them unconscious." The Telvari had never encountered a species with such physical resilience and pain tolerance. Human bodies produced adrenaline, endorphins, and other chemicals that allowed them to fight through injuries that seemed impossible to survive. Strike Team Alpha successfully planted explosive devices throughout the weapons systems. As they fought their way back to their extraction point, Lee triggered the detonation sequence. Massive explosions ripped through the command carrier. Its main weapons array failed completely. Secondary systems overloaded. The mighty ship began to drift, crippled and vulnerable. The effect on Telvari morale was immediate. Never before had one of their command carriers been disabled by a supposedly inferior species. Other ships began to retreat from Earth orbit, fearing similar attacks. In the Alliance headquarters, cheers erupted as news of the mission's success arrived. Though only half of Strike Team Alpha returned alive, their sacrifice had turned the tide of the war. General Doc survived the attack but faced censure from his superiors. As he watched the retreat begin, he knew that the Telvari had fundamentally misunderstood what they were facing. "We thought technology determined superiority," he told Lieutenant Mock as they observed Earth from their damaged ship. "But these humans, their bodies and minds are their most formidable weapons. They have evolved to survive conditions that would kill any Telvari." For the first time since the war began, humanity dared to hope for victory. The Telvari were not invincible after all. And humans were far stronger than anyone, including themselves, had realized. The tide of war had shifted. With captured Telvari ships and weapons, humanity was no longer fighting a purely defensive battle. The Global Defense Alliance launched its first offensives against alien outposts and supply lines throughout the solar system. Major Lee, now promoted to colonel after the successful attack on the command carrier, led the strategic planning for Earth's counterattack. Despite still recovering from his wounds, he worked tirelessly, sleeping only a few hours each night. "We can't match their numbers or technology," Lee told the Alliance commanders during a strategy meeting. "But we've identified their critical weakness." He displayed images showing Telvari soldiers in various states of distress. Their biology and psychology can't handle extended combat operations. They evolved as ambush predators. Quick, decisive victories with minimal resistance. Extended stress causes severe neurological breakdown in their species. The human military leaders nodded in understanding. Throughout history, humans had endured endless sieges, years-long campaigns, and generations of conflict. The ability to function under prolonged stress was deeply embedded in human psychology. "We need to force them into a war of attrition," Lee concluded, "something their biology can't handle." Meanwhile, in his ship orbiting Mars, General Doc had become obsessed with understanding the enemy he had so gravely underestimated. He spent hours studying human history, watching recordings of Earth's wars and conflicts. They'd been fighting continuously for thousands of years, he told his officers, displaying images from human battles throughout history. They've developed hundreds of different combat styles. They romanticize warfare in their culture. They celebrate their warriors. Lieutenant Mock looked troubled. "The High Command still believes this is a temporary setback. They're sending more ships." Doc shook his head. They don't understand what we're facing. He pointed to footage of human soldiers continuing to fight despite severe injuries. Look at their pain tolerance, their endurance, their psychological resilience. The Telvari Empire had conquered many worlds, but they had never encountered a species that seemed almost designed for warfare. Humans had evolved on a planet with countless predators and environmental challenges. Their bodies could adapt to radiation, temperature extremes, and atmospheric variations that would kill Telvari instantly. On Earth, Colonel Lee implemented his strategy. Human forces launched constant, unpredictable attacks against Telvari positions. They never engaged in direct, decisive battles where superior alien technology would prevail. Instead, they struck quickly and disappeared, only to attack again hours later from a different direction. Keep them awake, Lee ordered his commanders. Keep them stressed. Never let them rest or recover. The human attacks targeted Telvari command structures and communication systems. Without clear leadership and unable to coordinate effectively, the alien forces began to fragment. Individual units made mistakes. Friendly fire incidents increased. Supply ships were ambushed and captured. Our troops are experiencing severe stress reactions, reported a Telvari field commander to General Doc. Over 30% show signs of neurological damage from sleep deprivation and constant alert status. Doc wasn't surprised. Telvari needed regular rest cycles in specific environmental conditions. Humans, by contrast, could function on minimal sleep for extended periods. They had even developed stimulants to push their bodies beyond normal limits, something Telvari physiology couldn't tolerate. The High Command grew increasingly frustrated with General Doc's inability to crush the human resistance. They demanded immediate results. You said these creatures were primitive, the Supreme Commander scolded during a transmission. Yet they now attack our forces throughout their system. Explain this failure. I warned you not to underestimate them, Doc replied. They don't fight like any species we encountered. They don't fear death like we do. Their warriors consider it honorable to die in battle. The Supreme Commander dismissed his concerns. Increase orbital bombardment. Destroy their population centers. Force their surrender. But Doc had studied human history enough to know this approach would fail. Extreme pressure doesn't break them, he told Lieutenant Mock after the transmission ended. It makes them more determined, more united. Their entire evolution rewarded those who fought hardest when survival seemed impossible. Mock looked thoughtful. You almost sound like you admire them. I do, Doc admitted. They're facing a technologically superior enemy, with minimal chances of victory. Yet they fight with intelligence and determination. If our positions were reversed, would we show such courage? On Earth, despite heavy casualties, human forces continued their relentless campaign. Colonel Lee's strategy was working. The Telvari forces were fracturing under constant pressure. Captured alien soldiers showed signs of severe psychological breakdown. They expected us to surrender when they demonstrated their power, Lee told his officers during a rare moment of rest. They don't understand that humans have always faced overwhelming odds. From nature, from each other, from our own bodies. We're built to survive impossible situations. The war had reached its critical phase. Both sides had suffered terrible losses, but while the Telvari struggled with extended combat operations, humans were in their element, fighting against overwhelming odds with determination and adaptability that their enemy could barely comprehend. General Doc stood before the gathered Telvari High Command. His uniform, once pristine, showed battle damage. His gray skin had darkened with stress, but his 4 eyes burned with conviction as he addressed his superiors. We cannot win this war, he stated plainly, not through conventional means. The Supreme Commander rose from his seat, towering over Doc. This is treason. You suggest surrendering to primitives. I suggest understanding what we face, Doc replied calmly. I have studied humans extensively. They are not what we thought. He activated a display showing human history, their countless wars, their survival against natural disasters, their rapid technological advancement. They evolved on a death world. Their entire biology is designed for survival against overwhelming odds. The command chamber erupted in angry shouts. Most Telvari leaders refused to accept that a technologically inferior species could resist their might. They had conquered 17 systems before Earth. Their pride would not allow them to consider peace. Enough. The Supreme Commander shouted. General Doc is relieved of command. We will increase our forces and crush these humans completely. Doc looked at the faces of his fellow officers. Some showed doubt, others understanding. He had not expected to change their minds immediately, but he had planted the seed. That night, Doc and his loyal officers took control of the main Telvari fleet. It wasn't a violent coup. Many Telvari soldiers had seen humans fight and understood Doc's reasoning. Those who had faced humans in battle knew the truth. This war could not be won through force alone. On Earth, Colonel Lee received a surprising transmission. General Doc requested a meeting to discuss terms for peace. It could be a trap, warned General Yu as the alliance leaders debated the offer. Lee shook his head. I studied Doc's tactics. He's different from other Telvari commanders. He tries to understand us. The meeting was arranged on neutral ground, an abandoned space station orbiting between Earth and Mars. Colonel Lee led a small team to meet with General Doc and his representatives. When the two leaders faced each other for the first time, there was a moment of silent assessment. Lee saw not a monster but a tired soldier who had come to respect his enemy. Doc saw not a primitive beast, but an intelligent being who had earned his admiration. Your species has surprised us, Doc began. We believed technological advancement was the measure of civilization. We were wrong. Lee nodded. And we thought we were alone in the universe. We were wrong too. Their discussion lasted hours. They talked of battles fought, of losses on both sides, of misunderstandings and mistakes. Two military leaders finding common ground through their shared experiences of war. Not all Telvari support peace, Doc admitted. The extremists have gathered at our homeworld. They will not accept humans as equals. Then we face them together, Lee suggested. Show your people that our species can work together. The alliance between Doc's reformers and Earth's forces shocked both sides. Soldiers who had been trying to kill each other weeks earlier now trained together, each learning from the other's strengths. The final battle came at the Telvari homeworld. The extremist faction had gathered their forces, determined to continue the war until Earth was conquered or destroyed. Colonel Lee and General Doc led the combined fleet. As they approached the massive planetary defenses, Lee felt the weight of responsibility. Not just for humanity's survival, but for the possibility of a new relationship between species. Their orbital platforms are targeting us, reported a human officer. They've locked weapons, confirmed a Telvari technician.